Hey everyone! Today, we're going to crack the code on something that trips up, well, almost every single person learning French. The numbers. You know, they seem so complicated at first glance. But stick with me, because we are about to make them make perfect sense.
So let's just dive right in, shall we? At the very heart of all this confusion is a number like 99. Now in English, it's easy, right? 99. But in French, it's this four-part math problem. 99. Literally 420, 10, 9. It seems completely bizarre, I know, but I promise you, there is a logic to it, and we're going to figure it out together.
Okay, so before we tackle those wild math equations, let's build ourselves a solid foundation. And I've got some good news for you. From 0 all the way up to 69, the French system is actually surprisingly straightforward. It's going to feel pretty familiar.
First things first, you've just got to learn the numbers from 0 to 16. So from 0 to 6. Think of these as your non-negotiable building blocks. There's no secret trick here, you just have to memorize them. But once you have these down, you are ready to build basically everything else.
Now here's a quick but really important tip if you want to sound authentic. For numbers like 5, 6, 8, and 10, you know that final consonant sound you hear when you say the number by itself? Well, a lot of the time it just goes silent when it's followed by a word that starts with a consonant. This is a super common trap for learners.
Let me show you what I mean. Listen to the number 6 all by itself. 6. You hear that seize sound? Now listen to it in the phrase 6 cats. 6 shots. Did you hear that? The final S sound just vanishes. It becomes C. The exact same thing happens with 10. Dix becomes D in 10 books. Dix livres. It's a tiny change, but man, it makes a huge difference in sounding natural.
Okay, so let's see how this all builds up. From 20 to 69, a really beautiful, simple pattern kicks in. You just take the tens word, like vent for 20, and you tack on the digit. The only little quirk is for the number 1. Instead of just adding a, you connect it with et, which means and. So you get 21 for 21. But after that, it's just a simple hyphen. 22, 23, and so on.
All right, our foundation is built. Now we're heading into the fun part, the part you've been waiting for, the famous French exception. This is where the system gets its quirky reputation, from 70 all the way up to 99.
Here is the single most important thing to get into your head. From 70 onwards, the French language basically stops creating new words for the tens. Instead, it just starts doing arithmetic.
So what happens when we get to 70? Well, they don't invent a new word. Nope. They literally just say 60-10, 70. They take the word for 60, 60, and just add the word for 10, 10. It's as simple as that.
And this 60-plus logic, it just keeps going all the way through the 70s. 71 is 60 and 11, 71. 72 is 60, 12, 72. It goes all the way up to 79, which is, you guessed it, 60, 19. 79. You're basically just adding the teen numbers onto 60.
And right when you think you've got the pattern down, French throws a curveball. It switches from addition to multiplication. The number 80 is 80, which literally means 420s. This is such a cool historical leftover, probably from an old Celtic or Viking counting system that was based on 20s instead of 10s.
So once you're at 420s, you just keep adding from there. 81 is 81, or 421, and that brings us back to our original mystery number, 99. It's 99, which is 42019. You take your 80 and then you just add 19 to it. That's the secret.
Now pay attention, because here's a tiny little detail that gets a lot of people. See that S on the end of 80 for the number 80? That's there because it's plural, 420s. But the second you add another number, like an 81, 81, that S just vanishes. It's only there when 80 is all by itself.
Okay, take a breath. You made it through the hardest part, I promise. You'll probably be relieved to hear that once you've conquered the 90s, things get a whole lot simpler as we scale up into the hundreds and beyond.
So let's look at 200. It's 200. And look familiar? Just like with 80, the word for 100, cent, takes an S when it's a nice round multiple. Why? Because you have two hundreds.
So what do you think happens at 201? Well, the rule is exactly the same as with 80. That S disappears. It becomes 201. So that S is only used for the round hundred itself, not when anything follows it.
And for the really big numbers, the rules are actually super clear. Mille, which is 1,000, is the special one. It never, ever, ever takes an S. But million and milliard, which is a billion, they do. They act just like regular nouns. You have en million, but 2 millions, simple as that.
All right, for the final piece of our puzzle, let's quickly look at how to put things in order. We've mastered counting, now let's talk about first, second, third, what we call the ordinal numbers.
And the great news is, there's a really simple, consistent rule here. For most numbers, you just add the ending em. So 2 becomes deuxième, 3 becomes troisième. The only big exception you have to remember is first, which gets its own special word, premier.
And this is where knowing this stuff becomes super practical. Let's say you're in a building in France and you're looking for le premier étage. Whatever you do, don't go to the ground floor. In France, that's called the rez-de-chaussée. Le premier étage, or the first floor, is actually what an American would call the second floor. That is a key cultural difference that can save you a lot of confusion.
So, there you have it. What looked like a totally random, confusing math problem is actually a system with its own fascinating history and its own set of rules. From the simple patterns to the ancient leftovers, the logic of French numbers is now unlocked. You have officially cracked the code. So the only question left is, what are you going to count first?